Hello and welcome to the Take It, Use It, Live podcast. No, that's wrong. I'm sorry. Welcome to the Forbidden Dinner Table. I am Zach.
And I am Alex.
And we've got a great conversation in store for you today. We're going to be talking about thought leaders and more particularly, how does somebody become a thought leader in your life? And we're going to be exploring the space of creative thought leaders coming off of our wonderful conversation with Evan. I thought that was great. We covered a whole gamut of things, and one of the stops we made along the way was thinking about this concept of thought leaders, not just normally when I think about that, I think about like philosophers and people who go deep on topics. But Evan took the question in a different way and explored like what is a creative leader, and I think that's going to be a good area or topic for us to dive into today.
I loved it. I'm so glad he brought it up, and I'm so glad we're taking that now and running it with it ourselves, because I think this is going to be a really cool conversation.
Yeah, that's really the main thing we have on the docket today. I sort of split it in my mind up to three things of like, interested, Alex, of like, who are your thought leaders and why do you think they are your thought leaders? And like sort of how do they get on that list? Who are your creative thought leaders? And then who are your unexpected thought leaders? Like who is on your list, whether they are somebody who hold opinions or views that are totally different than yours, but yet you go to them to consider why or, takes that they have. Because when I look at my list of thought leaders that I sort of wrote up here, a lot of them have stuff in common, but then one or two are like, whoa, those are way out of left field. Like where does that person come from?
Let me ask you this, and I want to sort of define the terms here really quick.
Yeah.
So thought leader, I think we're both sort of talking about people in the realm of topics that we discuss a lot here, if it's politics, religion, or just schools of thought. Who are some leaders in that regard? Do you have anything to add maybe to that?
Actually, the word that I would probably think the most is like philosopher almost.
Yeah,
now,
okay.
That seems a little more academic and stiff because you could be a pop philosopher or you could just, sometimes the thought leaders or creative thought leaders that I have here are like who are really good lyricists and can take things and these emotions I have and pen them into words that are like more expressionable.
So we have sort of philosophers, a really good word actually for a lot of these people. I want to creative thought leader though. I want to unpack just a little bit, because are you, just to make sure that I'm also coming up with the right people, are you talking about thought leaders because of their field, creative thought leaders, or is this like a musician but I agree with their political points?
So more so because of their field. And actually, okay. I'm
glad you said that.
I have my list split into like people that I know a lot about and I know their like ideologies and I resonate with their ideologies. And then I have a list of like, I don't know their ideologies super deeply, but they either do things that are super creative that I like. They're like, one example of somebody on my list is like, they're a fantastic storyteller. I don't really know what their ideology is, but I just love how they craft a story.
Okay, perfect. So that aligns with what I was trying to come up with as well. Is like, so if I'm thinking of a musician, people that are pushing the boundaries of the music industry, and I don't necessarily care about their thoughts on religion. Like it's just their realm and who I would look to for ideas in that particular world. So we're on the same page. Okay, I just wanted to make sure.
No, but while we're kind of peeling the onion here too, thinking about what makes a thought leader, how you get onto the list. One thing that I struggled with is there are a few artists or writers or just leaders where they have one work that is super influential to me, but I don't know anything else outside of that work. So I struggle to put them on the list of thought leader or creative leader because it's like, well, did you just hit a home run with this one thing, or are you somebody that I can go to in a variety of different lenses and kind of viewpoints? So I almost have like, you needed to hit two really good data points for me. In order that was almost like a threshold I have of like, if you just did one incredible work, I may think that work is amazing, but you aren't really a leader because you haven't shown that you can replicate.
That work could push the boundaries, but I understand what you're saying.
Yeah.
Okay, well, let's jump into it then. Where do you want to start?
Do you want to start with creative, or do you want to start with the more just like thought leader in general?
I'm itching to talk creative, so let's start creative. And since Evan brought it up, I've been thinking about this because I think it's such a cool topic. So let's start there.
Should we just start at the top with like who do you have your top creative leader, or do you want to build from the bottom up?
Yes, I do. Do you want to start with me or you?
Let's start with you.
Okay, mine will not surprise anybody, but the first name that popped into my head was Tom DeLonge. Especially in the world of music. Most people know him as the nasally singer for Blink-182. So with that band and Angels and Airwaves, for me, really pushing the boundaries of song creation, music, what instruments to involve, just all of those sort of things, I think is really, really cool and really, really struck me throughout my life. This should be no surprise to you that name is pretty high on my list.
Well, the first thing I thought of is what conversation we had, boy, I think we were both back in high school, is how Tom DeLonge has been involved with 3 projects: Blink-182, Angels and Airwaves, Boxcar Racer.
3 music projects.
Music projects, very good point. Yeah, he's done films, books, uncovered alien UFO videos. He's got quite the resume. But on the music project front, it's very tough to, me personally, like, I could lean towards a favorite, but like we used to call it the Tom DeLonge triangle. And it was if we said, what are your top 5 favorite bands? Instead of saying like, well, those take 3, it's like, all right, it only gets 1 slot and it's the Tom DeLonge triangle of like these 3 things because they flex different muscles in the music world.
Totally. And there's different sounds and different, I mean, he pushed the boundaries with Angels and Airwaves on like what even an instrument is and what's being played over these songs, and just doing like long intros and stuff that would never really make it on the radio, but it's so creative and so cool. And to go down that road, I think is really cool. And I've always sort of taken that with my own work to just make what's cool to you and someone else will appreciate it. Like everything doesn't have to be cut for radio. Yeah,
totally. I think Love Part 1 was one of the first albums that I realized you don't have to put a very long intro to all of your songs. You should actually, I really like what they did where they put an outro to all of their songs. So that if you start the song, it starts sort of at the action part, like where it's just lifting off. But if you listen to it all as an album, there's beautiful transitions between the songs because there's these like 2-minute long outros to every song.
Yeah,
which is really,
totally. Which those cool. Outros are actually a lot of score in the movie that he made. And so it all fits together, which is also really cool to sort of write these different pieces and have them overlap. And so all of that artistically really opened my eyes, I guess, which might also be why he's up there, as he was the one to sort of open my eyes to these different ideas.
So I'm going to put you on the spot. Do you have a favorite Tom DeLonge album across all 3?
Ooh, across all 3. That does put me on the spot. The one that popped into my head first is I, Empire.
Oh, okay.
It's probably that or Love Part 2.
Okay.
Which I go Angels.
Yeah.
If I were to go Blink, I would go Self-Titled or Enema.
And then Boxcar.
Although Neighborhoods was pretty good. But that was starting to get a little weird. It's also like how he plays with others too is interesting. And sort of keeps his authentic sound, but he's been featured on some other tracks. He's on a Say Anything track. He's on a Millennium track. And so that's cool to sort of hear his influence brought to other people. And you could tell it's him, but the song is different or whatever. I think that's really neat too. He's definitely got like a fingerprint, and you can tell that's his fingerprint.
That's cool. Some uniqueness. I would say my favorite Tom DeLonge album is the self-titled Blink-182 album.
That's a really good one.
I've recently revisited that album and just it's incredible.
That's happens to be my wife's favorite.
Nice, great choice.
All right,
all right. I can tell you this person popped into my head for my number one kind of creative thought leader when we were talking to Evan, and he said, Evan's answer was Christopher Nolan. I thought that's a great answer. I like Christopher Nolan. Who is my creative thought leader? So I thought of it the moment we were talking with him, and it has stayed on top as I've pulled a lot more people in. Mine is Bo Burnham.
That's a really good one. He's on my list as well.
It's this intersection of comedy and music and art. So the fact that he dabbles in all 3. But I think above all of those things, or within all of those things, what I love about Bo Burnham is his acknowledgement of the form and then working in and outside of the form. in both music and comedy. He is brilliant at both of them.
Yeah, there's a funny line I'm thinking of after we watched Inside where we tried to describe what was happening, and it's like he's calling attention to an issue while making fun of the issue, but also agreeing that the issue exists. There's like a weird dynamic that his things go through to where it's like, this is a real problem and I mean it, but also it's silly.
Yeah, it's like he's drawing a box. He's creating a box that's a parody, and he's making fun of everything inside of it. But he also puts his own song inside of it.
Yes, yeah. It's he's the only one I've known to do this, or I felt this way about, where it's like, this is serious, but it's kind of silly, but actually I mean it, and it all makes sense.
Yeah, I love to. I think it's on Words, where he very explicitly says, like, I'm going to do traditional stand-up comedy, and then has these bits like, again, making fun of people doing traditional stand-up comedy by doing this, like, the most cookie-cutter stand-up comedy ever. And because you know that he knows it, it's funny, because he's like, look at this absurd cookie-cutter thing I'm doing that is stand-up comedy.
Yes. Yeah, he's the first one for me that really, the Venn diagram is a big overlap between comedy and art. Not to call other comedians not artists or anything, I think it is an art form, but his Venn diagram is there's so much in the middle there, more than anybody else.
I remember when I saw his show, not in person. You've seen him live. I
think I've seen him 3 times.
Oh, nice. Yeah, I have
at least twice.
Not
maybe
been
3
fortunate
times. I don't remember
enough to see him live, but when I saw What for the first time, I thought that was more art than comedy, which was a very unique feeling to be like that. Was both, but felt more like art.
Yes, I will put the last song of that album on and just experience it, and it's kind of funny, but it's also mostly not. Like it's kind of serious, but it sounds cool, and I love it. Cool. That's a really good one.
Let's back to you. Who's somebody towards the top of your list? We'll do this back and forth style.
Yeah, that's fine. So another one that came up for me was Taylor Swift, especially as like a lyricist and a navigator of the music industry, I guess. I think she's one of the few, I feel like, that has been on top of the world. I think nobody won more Grammys than her in like the 2010s or the 2000s. I don't remember which one.
I know too, she's just a quick, Evermore is up for Album of the Year. And if she wins it, she will be either tied with like Frank Sinatra for most albums of the year, or she's currently tied and will be like the leader standalone.
That's insane. But she also seems like someone who has remained authentic through the whole experience.
True. Especially with the change to Folklore and Evermore, where I feel like she leaned into who she is as a songwriter.
Those are not radio albums. Yeah. And again, she doesn't need it anymore either, but like she wasn't afraid to leave country. Then she really went out on a limb with Reputation.
Yeah.
And then sort of came back and then went on a different limb with Folklore and Evermore, like you said. And so for someone who's just like, I'm just writing the songs I want to write, you know, I really respect that. And as a lyricist and a songwriter, like, I don't know that I could name a better person that can just churn out hit after hit after hit. And so that one for me is a big person that I look up to, at least within the music industry.
I agree. We were talking a different time, Al, about like who are musicians that when they pass away is going to be a very, very sad day. And she was one that I named of like, just has meant a lot to me personally, because I mean, there's a lot, but like I've grown up listening to all the different Taylor Swift albums. So when I feel like there's such a
hopefully she's my age. So
I hope it's a long way away. But like when I was thinking about like, you know, people that it's almost like when you hear older generations talk about these like guitarists that they listened to in high school and stuff pass away. I see that in Taylor Swift of like, I see that connection.
That's going to be one where you're like, oh, they're still around performing. I listen to them. Like she'll be that. Like at 50, you know, going on stadium tours and all that kind of stuff.
Will she? I don't know.
I gotta think so.
I think about her song. Maybe it's just a song, right? Was it Lucky One that talks about like just leaving it all and
Retiring.
yeah, and who knows where they'll be. I mean, she doesn't need the money, so
No, but I think she just loves it too much.
performing. Yeah.
Yeah, I think, and it might cut down to like, a couple times a year or whatever. But I mean, I think those people, if you're away from it for too long, and I have no idea, but I'm just guessing, you really start to miss it. And so you got to come back and do like a couple shows. Why are the Rolling Stones still touring?
That's what I was thinking too, yeah. Or like
Or
Rush.
Paul McCartney too. Is like,
Paul McCartney.
what does he have to prove? But he still does it and plays 3-hour shows.
Yeah. Wild. Taylor Swift's a good one. I've got one more that's music related on my list, so I'll throw it out there. Ben Gibbard, the lead singer from Death Cab for Cutie, and two things I really like and appreciate about him is the ability also to kind of transform sound a little bit, like the early Death Cab to later Death Cab, and then really with his the Postal Service album is totally more electronic and all this sort of stuff. So I love the dabbling there, but really why I love Ben Gibbard is there are lyrics, whole songs, but also just lyrical chunks where I have these emotions and I don't know how to put them into words, and then he'll say something and I go, I feel that.
Yeah, he's an amazing lyricist as well.
Yeah.
That's a really good one.
I always say that if I had a band score the sad parts of my life, it would be Death Cab for Cutie.
Yeah, that's a good one. What would you pick for happy parts?
Carly Rae Jepsen.
That's actually a pretty good answer.
some beautiful. The first days of spring when it's like warm out, you will catch me with the windows down, and Carly turned up so loud in my car.
The thing about her, real quick, she's the only person I can think of where, you know how they used to tell you like you should smile when you talk to someone on the phone because they can tell the difference. I can like hear her smiling through her music as she's recording. And there's nobody else that I feel that way about. So that's a little aside with her that I really like.
She's great. Too, when I feel like now when I say Carly Rae Jepsen, people say, oh, like the Call Me Maybe, especially farther back when one of her only main albums out was Kiss, which that song is on. I'm always like, that's the worst song on the album. Like every other song is better than that, but that's the one that radio hit. And so
that's her Yellow Submarine.
Yeah.
I like the one with the music video with Tom Hanks.
I Really, Really Like You.
Yeah. That's a fantastic song.
I mean, I could rattle off so many. Emotions is probably my favorite album by her. But
okay.
Really, really good stuff.
I'll change gears a little bit here then and go with a director that popped into my head. And this is relatively recent. And this is where I really only have 2 solid works of art for this person. But I can't wait to see the next one. And that is James Gunn.
Oh!
So director of Guardians of the Galaxy. And Peacemaker. Now, here's why I like his work. He has found a way to pick a music genre and thread it throughout his films to where that almost becomes as important as what you are seeing on the screen. For Guardians of the Galaxy, it's like that 70s rock style, right? Threaded throughout the whole thing. For Peacemaker, it's like an 80s hairband rock and roll thing threaded throughout the whole thing. And so there are songs now, there's one on our playlist actually that's from that. There are songs and feelings where now I go, oh, this is Peacemaker. Or like in the show, you're just waiting for the next one because you know it's going to be in that same vein. And I don't know anybody else that does that. And so I can't wait to see his next one and like figure out what genre he picks and threads through the whole thing. I think it's really cool to mash those two things up.
No, I think that's awesome. I used to, back when I was a bartender, and the bartenders got to choose the music in the bar that I was at, which was a huge perk of the job. I used to just go throw on the Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 1 soundtrack.
It's awesome.
And everybody would love it in the bar.
Yeah. It's just so cool to have that be as big of a stamp as the actual like acting and the story and stuff, and have the music be that important. Because a lot of movies will just like pick the best music for the mood, and they're all over the place, different artists, different time periods, and all that kind of stuff, but not him. And so there's always like a theme to it, and I think that's really cool and pushing the boundaries on the mashup between the music the movie or the show and its soundtrack, and having them much tighter as a relationship.
The only person that came to mind who does it differently, but also has an incredible dance between what you're hearing and what you're seeing, is Edgar Wright with Baby
I thought
Driver.
about that too.
Yeah.
Totally. Yep. He was almost going to be on my list, but outside of Baby Driver, I don't really necessarily know another good example. But that is also an example of kind of what I'm talking about, where they line up in such a way that it's like you have to like double take almost, because it's unique and different.
Yeah. I mean, Edgar Wright doesn't do the same thing with music and movies, but his other works are really good. Hot Fuzz.
I think he's still a great director.
Yeah.
I just watched
Drivers.
Last Night in Soho, and I thought that was great too. And his work is a little all over the place too, which is cool that you can take different styles. But yeah, his name floated in my head, but I didn't write it down.
Same. You know who I think too, it's interesting now that the more you talk about this, I think about it like, oh yeah, these are incredibly influential people, but they weren't in my mind when I wrote this down. Is like, who has an amazing relationship between music and the movie as well as Quentin Tarantino. Now, he's got so much going on in his movies that I think the music almost isn't talked about as much, but he has a fantastic, I think, I'm a huge Tarantino guy. I know you're not as big into him.
Yeah, look, I respect him, and I think what you're saying is true, but I also think his movies are a bit overrated.
That's fair. There's a scene in Reservoir Dogs where it's like a 60s pop song that's really upbeat, and there's a guy and he's tossing a knife back and forth and he's cutting somebody up and he's singing this like really bright pop song, and it's just like, oh, it's like uncomfortably good.
Yeah, if you've seen the movie, that you should know exactly what scene that is, but I don't know what else to say about it, but yeah.
I think it's just a great example of how Tarantino has a wonderful relationship between sound and what you see.
Yeah. Yeah, so that's sort of where I was going with that, of pushing the boundaries of that relationship.
Yeah. I have another example too. I almost thought you were going to say the person that I had in my mind when you said he only has 2 works, but you're excited to see a third. For me, that's Jordan Peele. Because I loved Get Out. That's I think that's the best written movie I've ever seen, was Get Out.
I didn't even think about him, but yeah. I think those are great movies. I have a small problem with them, and maybe that's why it didn't come to my head, is he asks a lot of the viewer to like just accept certain things.
I think he more so with Us, but I get what you're saying.
Yeah, certainly more so with Us. Well, both of them, I guess, but
there's some
more so with Us. I think you are right, but I think they're well done movies. I think they're really good, but in a movie that seems to be very touching at like realistic themes and all of that, there's a lot of non-realistic elements going on, which can be a little bit jarring, I suppose.
I think that's really good criticism of Us. There's a suspension of belief that you have to get past to really enjoy the film.
Totally, especially in that one. In the other one, it's kind of at the end, but that's about it. All of that being said, I'm excited to watch this next one.
Same. I think it's called Nope. Comes out this summer. I'm very
that sounds right.
Excited to just see what the heck it is.
Yeah, I knew this would happen too as we start bouncing back and forth, especially between you and me. We'll be like, oh yeah, and that guy, and then that girl, and more will come to mind.
Totally. You know what's interesting too is I'm curious, people that listen to this, if they're going to be like, I don't know who any of these people are, or if they're going to be like, well, they're going to know like Taylor Swift and things like that. But I went on a date recently, and we were talking about podcasts and things like that. And she rattled off like 6 or 7 names in a row. And I was like, I don't know who any of these people are. And then I was like, I'm not on Instagram. And she's like, no, these people aren't on Instagram. And I was like, what? Like, what lane of pop culture are you in where I just like, or me that I'm in, that I just like don't know any of these people that you're referencing. But, the world is so big. There's so much entertainment in it. And
there's so much
in
content. It's pretty easy to find yourself in a spot that other people just aren't there.
Well, and you and I pay attention to directors because I love having friends that I can say Edgar Wright, and they'll be like, oh yeah, I know these movies. Where like a lot of other friends that I know love these movies, but they're like, yeah, I have no idea who directed that.
Yeah, I just like to try to pay attention to the artist. Or I see a movie and go, that was really good. I'd love to know who directed it. It's like my first thought. And it might be someone I know, or it might be someone new, and then I go, I'll be looking forward to their next work.
Exactly. Yeah. When you find a creative mind that just really like you resonate with it, or you love the storytelling that they do. For me, this is David Fincher. I just love the way he captures your eyes, and so like Fight Club, Zodiac, those films are just gripping.
Really, anybody that sort of makes your jaw drop, whether that's literally or figuratively, I need to know more about. Like who does Primer? That's another good one.
Oh, Shane Carruth.
Thank you, Shane. Yeah, that was another one where it's like I got to know more about this guy because those are incredible works of art, especially Primer.
It's a shame he's only done 2 full-length films. I would love to see a third.
If he ever did a third, I'd be all in to see it.
He did a short film called Everything and Everything and Everything that I've seen like 3 or 4 times. It's really good.
Oh, I've never seen that.
What I love too is now we're just getting deep in the weeds.
Yeah, we'll bring it back here and go to the next person.
But so Shane Carruth, he's probably how I imagine myself as a director too, where he writes it, he's like stars in it, he directs it, he composes it. Like they are his projects, and the part of the problem. Upstream Color, which is his second film, is just incredible cinematography. It's some of the best I've ever seen. But it gets the symbolism in that movie is just like so wackadoodle, I'm going to say, for lack of a better term. What I love about his short film is he reins it in a little bit so that the symbolism lands more.
Real quick too, this name just popped into my head in terms of like filmmaking, but shorts and comedic, Julian Smith.
Oh, that's an old YouTube name.
Old YouTube filmmaker, really, really good stuff, and all like really great quality. But if I were like learning film now, or especially like then when we were in school and he was making these projects, I look to him for like filmmaking because they're short but they're tight and they're really well done and all of that stuff. So that name just popped into my head.
It's tough to do a really short film too, like a 2 or 4 minute skit. Like you have to world build. Does. You have to world build so quickly. To get people like orientated in your.
And some are good and some are bad, but that's kind of what his game was for a long time, and they were mostly at least entertaining. So
yeah, definitely.
Yeah. All right, I think ball's in your court here to.
I think I did Jordan Peele. So.
Oh, I didn't realize that was on your list. I thought you were just shooting from the hip there still. Okay. Then I'm going to go, if the audience doesn't know, I write and produce some of my own music. So, Zach, you're not going to know this one, but there is a producer that I look up to a lot, and he has workshop classes that you can get, which I'm looking into getting, but he also just does YouTube like advice and tips and tricks on song producing. He's been part of Grammy-nominated stuff, and his name is Ill Factor. So he runs Beat Academy is what the name of his like site and all of that stuff is. So anything music production related, I'm pretty much just look towards him. And he helps fuel my creativity. I've learned so much watching his videos. He'll also just be like, we're going to take this Billie Eilish song and I'm just going to try and recreate it as close as I can. And by the time he's done, like it sounds identical. That's which cool. Is just the touch of a good producer and a good songwriter. So I look up to him a lot to flush out the toolkit that I have when writing and producing my own stuff.
How did you find out about him? Just like a YouTube algorithm?
I actually don't remember.
Something his way?
Yeah, I think I was looking up like tips and tricks in Ableton, which is the software I use, and he popped up. And I just was like, that was such a cool video. And I subscribed, and he does all these different shorts and tricks, and here's how to maybe throw on a certain preset or a certain plugin and make your song sound like this, and here's something cool I was working on. I layered this snare hit with this other thing, and now it sounds like this, and I'm like, this is so cool. So it's just little things like that, but then he does have like a full-blown program that I haven't bought yet, but I'm seriously considering it to do like how to process vocals, and it's like a 6-step course or whatever. So that's just someone. Ill Factor again is his name. That's who I look up to in terms of like music production and quality of songwriting and using your audio workstation to do all this crazy stuff.
There's nothing better than finding like one video or something on an algorithm and then falling in love with a content creator and then realizing they have like 35 videos and you just like working through the beautiful backlog. Like I love that feeling.
100%. Yep, exactly. And he's still putting stuff out too. It's not like, oh, I wish I was present, when they were putting stuff out. No, he's like not daily, but weekly at least, putting stuff out of videos. Or he'll just do, so if you are a member of his program, he'll just do like a listening session and you can submit your music and he'll just be like, okay, here's what I would do. And he'll tweak it on the fly, and by the time he's done, it sounds so like crisp and
polished.
Perfect. Yeah, it's awesome. It really is cool. So that name came to mind. I know you don't know who he is, but I just had to say it.
Well, I'm kind of thinking too, we're building like an index of people that if someone's listening, they can be like, oh, I want to learn more about movies or music or this. Like they could just sort of go look into these people. That's how
digital Rolodex.
Yeah, of like just like people to go learn more about. So I think that's cool.
Yeah, it's true.
I'll keep up the idea of sort of just like out of left field or sort of like real creative. This almost matches up a little bit into the topic of like who's an unexpected leader to you, and mine is Penn Jillette of the Penn and Teller, the magician.
That's an interesting one. I know them. I've seen some of their things, but I don't know that I've ever actually heard them like talk about their work. So
it's fascinating for me. One, Penn Jillette has this amazing short story called I think it's called The Pain Addict, which got converted into part of a Black Mirror story. I didn't know that. Yeah, I want to say it's like 10 pages long. It is super dark, fitting for Black Mirror, and just he wrote it under a pen name. So when you realize it is Penn Jillette, you're like, where did this come from? I think it's called The Pain Addict. Very good. Why I know a lot about Penn Jillette's sort of world is I've listened to lectures or him talking about, he's a very outspoken atheist, and he speaks about this idea of like what is magic and like this relationship of like being a magician and your relationship to truth, and this idea that like you the viewer want to suspend the idea that I'm doing something with sleight of hand. You want to be fooled, and how that's like a totally different relationship than most of the time you're like not in that space.
Magicians do have a weird relationship with truth because of what you just said, where the audience goes in asking to be fooled.
Right. It's all part of the game, right? I think Derek Delgadio, another sleight of hand
bring him up as well,
magician that we like, he talked about in his book that I'm reading right now, like magicians are the most honest profession because they tell you straight up that they're liars. Like that's part of the whole game.
He mentioned in an interview after his latest work in and of itself, so typically he would like go out and try to talk to people maybe after the show and shake hands or whatever. And he said it was really weird after that show would end, the impact of it was so heavy nobody wanted to come up and talk to him. Because if you did, you're almost bursting the bubble that he formed for you. And by going up and talking to him like off stage, you would break the reality that you were still kind of living in after the show, which I totally understand. And so it is weird that you're like, I know that wasn't true, but I just want to live in it because it's better that it is.
Yeah. We talked a little bit about, sort of Bo Burnham and art. Like it's weird to think about magic as an art.
Yeah, it is.
That's how I'm sure a lot of magicians have a sort of relationship with it.
Yeah, true. Yeah, for sure.
Penn Jillette, too, has a quote. This is sort of from his lectures or talking about atheism, where he talks about evidence and being able to show the proof of something is one of the most selfless things. Because it's one thing to say, like, I feel this way, or like a God makes me feel this way. But if you're building a community, there's nothing stronger than being able to say, well, this is my evidence for a belief. I want you in on this as well. Like, by showing evidence and being able to talk about the proof of something, you're breaking down the walls between people so that you can get behind a common thing. And I was like, how profound that this magician is talking about like how to build a community by a way of evidence. Like it's just, he seems like an incredibly intelligent individual.
I've never thought about the relationship between magicians and truth before, but that it is fascinating, and it's something I'm going to kind of think about more, I think, because no one would know both sides of it more than a magician.
You know what you have to hide and what you have to show and where people's focus is. Yeah, it's a very
cool.
There's so much that we don't see on stage when magicians are.
Oh, totally. Definitely. Yeah. Okay. Let's do a couple more creatives and then maybe we should move on because we could sit here and do this all night, or we can do a part 2. But you have a couple names on your list here that jogged my memory.
Sure.
So this is a duo. But I'm going to say Jon Favreau and Roy Choi. Jon Favreau being a director, Roy Choi being a chef. Now, the reason I say these two together, they made the Chef movie, which also got turned into a Netflix series. Nothing made me want to learn about cooking and advance my cooking skills more than watching those two make stuff together in those series and movie settings.
What's the name of the series?
The Chef Show.
The Chef Show. Okay,
so the movie is just called Chef.
Chef, okay.
Which everyone should go watch. It's awesome. The whole point of the movie was that I believe Jon Favreau noticed that, which he's done some of the Marvel movies and he's doing the newest Star Wars series, and he's a pretty well-known director. He was like upset about the way that chefs get depicted in movies and stuff and said it's unrealistic. So he set out to make a really realistic chef movie. Now in doing that, he teamed up with Roy Choi, which was an LA like food truck guy, famous chef out there. And so Roy Choi was like an advisor to the whole movie to get it right from a chef's perspective. It's a fabulous movie. And from the movie, they had so much fun cooking together that they were like, let's keep cooking. And they turned it into a show. And so they have like celebrities on the show. Like I think the first episode has Gwyneth Paltrow and Bill Burr show up.
It's quite a combo for people.
And just cook with them. And Roy talks about all these inside cooking chef stuff, and it's fascinating. And so in terms of my own cooking growth, both of those things, the series and the movie, were like really, really impactful.
That's cool.
So, yeah. In the cooking world, those two for sure. Go watch the movie. It's awesome.
I'm putting Chef on my to-watch list.
Yeah. Oh, it's so good.
While we're just talking about cooking, this reminds me of there's a YouTube channel, I think it's called Bon Appetit, which is like a catering service company too, but they have some amazing YouTube videos. My favorite being where they do this sort of skit game, I don't know, just segment we'll call it. They take a super common person, just like, I feel like they just reached and grabbed somebody from the production crew and they put them and they put a world famous chef. My favorite one is when they do Bobby Flay, and they go back to back. So they're both looking at, they have all the ingredients and they have their kitchen stands and ovens and things. And Bobby Flay has to out loud say everything that he's doing. And the common person has to follow along, and Bobby Flay can't turn around the whole time to point at anything and help him. And you're watching Bobby Flay be like, okay, you julienne cut this and you're gonna do this, and the common person is just always struggling to be like, Bobby Flay would be like, okay, are you whisking, the bowl? Do you have it sort of like fine? It's this like beautiful mixture on Bobby Flay's side, and you see the common person's all clumpy, and he goes, yeah, I'm mixing. Like, it's just cool. The last thing they do is they plate up, and Bobby Flay is like putting sauce and everything, and the last moment is they turn around and show each other plates, and the chefs are always like semi disappointed.
That sounds awesome.
So those are great.
That's so this was the name on your list that made me think of this, but Gordon Ramsay and all of his shows, him for sure is another big person I look up to in the cooking world. I love most of his TV shows. I know he can be kind of a dick, but where he's going to restaurants and he's just like, are you serious right now? Like, this is what you guys are doing? But he just
loves the craft so much he hates people.
I love that though. I respect that. And I do look, if I see cooking tips from him, I'll usually stop and pay attention.
Same. I've learned some tips in the kitchen from YouTube videos.
I still make scrambled eggs the way he told me to from a video from like 15 years ago.
Same. My scrambled egg approach is a Gordon Ramsay approach.
Yeah, that's awesome. Okay, cool. Yeah.
All right. One more person I can think of. Maybe this will even bring us over into the philosophical space, but this person to me is a musical leader, a creative leader, a writer, just like a fantastic across the board, and that is Dessa, the Minneapolis hip hop artist, whose autobiography, My Own Devices, I have read twice and listened to audiobook once. I bought the audiobook just to hear her read it. And like there's songs sprinkled in the audiobook, which is fantastic.
Can you add a little why this particular person stands out to you, or?
Well, I can say
musically,
I'm super selective when it comes to hip hop. I've definitely grown to appreciate and like the genre more. Why I think I struggled to get into it is because it wasn't very relatable for me about like growing up on the streets and selling drugs and all, like some of it had good beats and stuff, but I just didn't resonate with the content of the lyrics and things like that. Where Dessa came and just shattered that, where she wrote about like being heartbroken and rapping about that, or just like it's tough to even put into words. It's very intelligent too. Like I've learned about philosophical paradoxes by Googling her lyrics.
Oh wow.
She taught, like, there's a line that she just here's an example, talking about like hearts changing and shapes changing, and then Euclid's made to play the fool, which is a reference to non-Euclidean geometry, about how like everybody thought geometry went one way and worked in a certain way that Euclid had all nailed out. And then somebody showed that you can do non-Euclidean geometry. Euclid's made the play, just like these lines that are like deep and very intellectual. And it just, every time, what I really love too about reading her autobiography is you get this very rich backstory to one of her albums, and it makes listening to the album and just even the title of the album, Chime, so much more powerful. So
nice. Okay. Perfect. That's exactly what I was looking for. That's awesome. Yeah. All right. Well, so okay, let's maybe move into then some like more philosophical thought leaders, or if we even want to blend this with surprise ones and just say this is one and I never would have thought that it would be, because I have a name for sure that fits that description. So yeah.
What do you got? Surprise?
Well, all right. So here's my one, who I do look to now for like philosophical ideas, especially around religion and politics, that I never thought I would look to, and that name is Russell Brand.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I can see that now.
Pretty much just runs his YouTube channel at this point. I think he does some stand-up and stuff, but obviously he was a kind of a big-time actor and all of that for a while. The system kind of chewed him up and spit him out. And so to listen to him now just talk about like politics and all that is really interesting. And I think he's one of those people that the left him. And so he'll be like, look, I haven't changed any of my ideas and I'm now being called right wing. Like, what the hell is going on? So to hear his perspective, which is also a foreign perspective, is really interesting on a lot of stuff. So that was a little surprising.
That's a great one too. What I love about him, I haven't kept up with his YouTube channel, but I as somebody who is more leftist, even though he's sort of lost now in the spectrum of what is left and right, I really like him because he's like, I will talk to anybody. I will sit down and interview anybody, and that's what I really appreciate about him.
He has talked to most other famous political YouTubers on both sides of the spectrum, which I think is really cool. And he will respectfully disagree with anybody, which I love. I think that's great.
Somebody too, again, wasn't on this list, but once we start batting back and forth here, Matthew McConaughey, somebody I wouldn't think I'd get one. Political or just like ideological advice, but you and we might have even referenced it on this podcast of being aggressively centrist is a fantastic approach that I got from him.
He is a really good one. Also, I think a same type of person who like is liberal, but in the truest meaning of what that word actually means, and doesn't necessarily subscribe to left or right. He's just like, everybody just be authentic and be yourselves. And that's a lot of what kind of keeps him in Austin too, I think, is that sort of open-mindedness and all of that. So yeah, that's a good one.
One more, I think this is the most surprising from my list of like an unexpected thought leader, especially as somebody who has strong views about sort of atheism, agnosticism, possibilianism, as we've talked about on this podcast, is David Wolpe, or Wolpe, Wolpe. He's sometimes referred to as America's rabbi. So he's a very, he's a rabbi, Jewish individual. He has debated a lot of the strong atheists. So he's had debates with Sam Harris. He was a great friend of Christopher Hitchens. Like, they've debated a ton. And just what I love about David Wolpe is this like patience, and like you can read him from a deep kind of Jewish lens, or, you know, going deep into Judaism, but you can also just, he talks a lot that just speaks to volume of spiritualism in general.
I had to look up his picture, but I know exactly who you're talking about now that I see his face. Yeah, that's cool. When you said David, I thought you were going to go right ahead and say David Eagleman.
He's one that is on my list that is not surprising. I love him.
Yeah, but I think you'd also described something that's true about him, which is people like that seem to want to listen a lot more than they want to speak.
That's a good point, yes.
And I think that's really cool. Yeah.
Yeah.
And they'll give you their opinion, but first I want to hear yours out and make sure that you're sort of speaking out to the same terms and all of that.
So I just listened to, this is pretty recent, Lex Friedman, who's another great thought leader,
yep. Mm-hmm.
Had a 2.5 hour conversation with David Wolpe, and they just talked about like the state of the world and Judaism and spiritualism and all of this sort of stuff. And David Wolpe said this joke on it that has been bouncing around my mind, and I'd like to do my best to cue it up here. I purposely left it off the list so that you couldn't read ahead and read this joke.
Nice.
So here goes. God was approached by a scientist who said, "Listen, God, we've decided we don't need you anymore. These days we've sort of figured it all out. Science has taken us very far. We can clone people, we can transplant organs, we can do all sort of things that used to be considered miraculous. So we just don't need you anymore." And so God replies, he says, "You don't need me. You can do it all. Can you make a human?" And the scientist says, Yep, we can make a human." And God says, "Really? Just like I did, out of the dirt?" And the scientist says, "Yep." And God says, "Okay, show me." So the scientist bends down, picks up a scoop full of dirt, and God says, not so fast. Get your own dirt."
Ooh. Okay.
I have been thinking about that so much after hearing it and dissecting it. Huh. Joke's not even the right word, but just like
yeah, right. It's right. It's just sort of like a mic drop moment.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, that's a good one.
Over to you.
Over to me for a philosophical thought leader. Let's see. There's a couple different directions now I could take this. I think what's funny now is we've hit a point now where I feel like we have an overlapping list of names, so we can probably, we could speed round through some of them, but like
Jed Abumrad is somebody that I don't know, I probably follow some more of his projects, but your appreciation of More Perfect, and I don't know if you've listened to a ton of Radiolab, he's the producer of that.
Yeah, some.
He's somebody that I've thought for a long time would be at the top of my list of like who I could have dinner with.
Yeah, that's a really good one. I was going to say Sam Harris. He's sort of like a given at this point.
He's my number one. If you ask me who my number one thought leader it's Sam Harris.
Yeah. Jordan Peterson, which if you ever get any like one or two of these people in a room together, usually magic happens.
Yeah.
Brett Weinstein is another one.
Jordan Peterson
Take a minute on Jordan Peterson, yeah.
Well, both of them are ones where they're thought leaders, but you also part of the reason too that I what I like about them is I don't agree with everything that they say.
Yeah, I was going to say that too. Is like, by the way, us listing these names doesn't mean we fully agree with these people, but just like, okay, I see where they're coming from. I didn't think about that before. Or like willing to explore more spaces, just like we kind of do here. So yeah, totally agree with really all three of those so far: Sam Harris, Jordan Peterson, Brett Weinstein. Like their thought processes, but I don't necessarily agree with everything.
Yeah.
But
Sam
I like
Harris.
listening to them talk about the mental sort of gymnastics that they're going through.
Sam Harris is one I have to catch myself not to just regurgitate his views because I
Totally.
I like he is one I am hard pressed to find. I'm sure there are some things I don't agree 100% with him on, but I'm very lockstep. Where Jordan Peterson and Brett, there's some stuff
I can name one
of something that Sam Harris that you disagree with.
Yeah,
Fire.
possibilityism.
Oh, that's true. Yeah, good point. I agree more with David Eagleman on that stance.
Yeah.
And just to unpack that a little bit more for anyone listening, as Alex and I start speaking our language.
Well, we're also calling back a previous episode, but yeah, please do lay out the distinction.
David Eagleman is the one who coined, David Eagleman being a neuroscientist, coined possibilianism as, the way that I shorthand describe it is, we know too much to subscribe to an old school traditional religion like Judaism or like Catholicism, but we don't know enough or don't have enough confidence to fully subscribe to atheism, that there is no God or sort of divine entity. And Sam Harris has come out and said, that doesn't really mean anything. You're more sort of just posturing and saying something sort of art-like. And David Eagleman's response, which I agree with, is the very fact that you're responding in this way and sort of like makes me feel not at home in the atheist camp, that you have sort of this such confidence without evidence in the atheist camp.
Yeah, almost gatekeeping in a way of like being like, well, no, actually you do belong to us. And it's like, well, no, I'm saying I don't. And I think there's a distinction there.
To me,
I think it's important.
I almost think atheism and any of the sort of traditional religions fall into the same trap of arrogance, of thinking they know without having all of the proper evidence.
Well, we're going down a different road here, but to me, if you really want to be an atheist, maybe we're just putting more weight into that word, and where if you are like, I'm atheist, you 100% believe that there's nothing else out there. So even if you 99% believe there's nothing else out there, by definition now you aren't an atheist.
Well, this is why...
And I think that's David Eagleman's point.
Yeah, and I resonate with that. So it's a great point, actually. I don't agree with Sam Harris. And you have teed up one of my greatest thought leaders that I'm surprised I left off the list, Carl Sagan.
Oh, yeah. I had made a mental note of him earlier, and I was expecting that name to come back up.
And Carl Sagan said... I first heard about this from Carl Sagan, and then I think David Eagleman put a final point on it with possibilianism, is like Carl Sagan talking about not being an atheist because he wanted to keep the scientific mindset of like, I'm open to anything. Just show me.
Right. I have a hypothesis, and that's as far as that goes.
Right. Or just like, I don't, if I'm so confident on atheism, I'm shut the door on you being able to show me evidence of something else. If that's true, I want to see it. Like, bring the evidence.
Yeah. That's what I meant by just like, I have a hypothesis. Not a hard stance. I have a hypothesis.
Gotcha.
Could be right, could be wrong. If you have evidence to support or
I will change my hypothesis if you give me the right evidence. Yeah. It's a very, it's like, I've almost realized there's this layer of science, and then there's those that are at like the top of the science layer that are so good at remaining very open-minded to be like, just show me what you're claiming here.
Yeah, and I saw you had Neil deGrasse Tyson on your list too, which I agree. Evan brought him up. I think he's great to listen to as well. He's sort of a modern day version of Carl Sagan. Yeah.
Richard Dawkins is another one too. That is just I've ate up so many hours of YouTube of Richard Dawkins talking. I think he's incredibly brilliant. A little less open-minded than like Carl Sagan or David Eagleman, but still incredibly. There's a time and place for like the formal debate and then just the general conversation. And I think Richard Dawkins can do both. He's just a little more well-known, and there's more material of him being a little bit like he does a lot of debates
I see.
Well.
A little more intense.
Yeah. I mean, Sam Harris does debates too, so yeah.
Yeah. Well, but like, I mean, if you take the Sam Harris Jordan Peterson debate, for example,
that was more of a conversation.
Yeah, debate's a strong word. It's more of a conversation, which people label us as debaters as well, and I would be like, well, we're strong conversationalists.
Well, and what I'm trying to push towards now is debate people less and understand people more. That's been my mantra.
This goes back to the individual David Wolpe that you brought up earlier, and I made the comment of like, listen first, listen more, and then, speak when you get asked what your opinion is.
Definitely listen more, or even just when people make claims, don't emotionally react. Just go, that's an interesting claim. Walk me through how you got there.
Totally. Yep.
And then, it invites the listening. Show your work. I mean, this is all, I'm dancing around street epistemology.
Totally. Yeah.
While you shot it out there, I just want to give a quick nod too of a thought leader that's grown for me with the Jordan Peterson Sam Harris debates is Douglas Murray.
Yeah, I like him a lot as well. Definitely, again, don't agree with everything, but a well-spoken, well-thought-out individual for sure.
Yep.
Yeah. Also true of someone like Ben Shapiro as well.
Ben Shapiro, in some areas, is really good at showing his work, and that's when I love to follow it. In other areas, I get a little just lost into what he's.
Yeah, where I'm like, jumps. All right, dude, you're pretty far away from me now. Whereas other times I go, yeah, okay, I get where you're coming from. Yeah. The one thing I do like about him being right wing, also not afraid to call out sort of his own side, his own party.
Yes. Well, I think too, what Ben Shapiro gets is, I believe these things because of religion, but that's a terrible reason to convince you. So let me bring out my line of thinking and base it in very empirical based thinking rather than being like, because God said so. I love that he acknowledges it and does it that way. I wish more people in the religious community would do that.
Yeah, totally. But again, just certainly don't agree with anything, but someone I will listen to and go, oh, okay, that's an interesting perspective. And then move on. There's a name here that we haven't said, and a year, maybe 2 years ago, would have been first on our list. Do you know who I'm referring to?
No.
I have a signed copy of his book.
Oh, give me 1 second. Dave Rubin.
Yeah. So I think a year and a half or 2 years ago, that would have been number one.
Would have been top 5 for me.
Yeah. So again, I certainly don't agree with everything, but also someone really interested to listen to and sort of hear the perspective and all of that, but has kind of lost me in recent times.
Same, fall from grace, which is actually, you bring up a good point, something I even think about of like thought leaders that you've struck from your list. Dave Rubin would be probably the best example of somebody I can think of.
I agree. I no longer really listen to him. Tim Pool for me is another one.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Newscaster, YouTuber guy I used to listen to a lot, but has just gone a little too far down the road of the right wing to where everything now is slanted, and I'm like, all right, let's get back to the middle.
One for me, I've read Race Matters by Cornel West and loved it. I believe it was written in the 90s. Don't quote me on that. And then went to go research what he was talking about now, and it just seemed very divorced from what he had written about previously. And that was one where I was like, I really love what you put out here, but now the modern takes that you're dropping, I just have a tough time following. Cornel West.
We've covered a large group of people here. Is there anybody left on your list that you're dying to talk about?
The only one that I feel like should get a little bit of airtime, and this is actually, she's the one that made me think about, you have this one incredible work, do you have any other data points, is Alison Bechdel. So she did Fun Home, a graphic novel. I'll tell a little story on that, but the reason I really like Alison Bechdel is I love the work Fun Home and the Bechdel test, if you're familiar with that at all.
Oh, yes, okay. I am familiar with that.
So that was sort of a little bit of the second data point. I've also read or viewed some of her cartoons, just like her comic strips, and they've been good. And so like all those things together, she's somebody that if I would have a question in like sort of LGBTQ or just queer theory, I would I would go and try and find her take on it. So Fun Home, the story on that is, so when I went to Lawrence University, you're there for welcome week as a freshman, and I'm moving in. I'm all sweaty. I'm getting my picture taken for my ID, and they hand me this book, Fun Home. It's a graphic novel, maybe in the neighborhood of 200 pages, and my first freshman studies class that I have to take is in like 2 or 3 days, and they say we recommend reading it twice before going to class.
Ooh.
And I remember walking away being like, I'll be lucky if I read this thing once.
Right.
Which I did power read. I mean, your first week of college, you're meeting all these people and doing all this stuff. But I did hunker down and get through it once. And I mean, it's a book on a woman exploring her own sexuality in this sort of dialogue on queer theory. And coming from small town Wisconsin, like I remember sitting down in my first class and being like, what the heck did I just sign up for with this college experience?
I could see that, yeah.
Of like, what am I going to be reading? And just to take this story a little bit further, I walked in. Again, this is only freshmen on campus. Other people haven't arrived yet unless you're in sports. But it's the first day of classes is literally you just take this freshman studies class and then all your other classes pick up. So I walk in. It's the very first class of college. I sit down at the table. I'm a few minutes early. Somebody comes and sits down next to me, and I turn to them and I say, hey, did you get through the book? Did you read it, once all the way through? And he turns to me and he looks and he goes, oh, I got the syllabus over summer. I've read every book already.
Whoa.
And I went, whoa! I slowly turned to the person that on my left. They were sitting down, and I said, hey, did you get through the book? Did you read it? And he goes, I haven't started it. And I went, we're going to be friends.
Okay. Yeah. All right, cool.
But there was this moment where I was like, what am I doing? Who am I surrounded by of like these people that have downloaded the syllabus ahead of time and read every book over the summer?
That's a
I was
little
like,
strange. Yeah.
I was like, I didn't even know you could do that.
I will say with that though, most of the people we listed are men, which is, I never really thought about that. I will add, Crystal Ball is one of the news anchors of the show that I get most of my news from, which is Breaking Points.
Breaking Points is great.
So she's cool. Her co-host Sagar is cool. You get both a little bit of a left and right perspective, so I'll shout them out too, because that's pretty much where I get the majority of my news at this point. Breaking Points on YouTube is great. And I do really enjoy listening to her speak as well.
Yeah, the other female I had on my list was Jacinda, the Prime Minister from New Zealand. She is like one of the most beloved politicians. It's like, I don't know if this is true or not. Somebody told it to me. I would have to fact check it. Of like, even the opposition when she was running was like talking about how good she was. like that. That's where you strive to be. Where like it's not even a contest when you're going into the election, because she had such a popular rating and everybody loved her. I'm not sure if her popularity rating is still super high post COVID, but I know she's a well-respected leader.
Someone I should go listen to is the Prime Minister of Finland, who is a woman and like 35.
Oh, I know Jacinda's younger too.
I should go listen to some speeches or something. I would just be curious to what someone so young in a position of power sounds like and sort of what their ideas are.
So Jacinda's 41 and she got reelected as prime minister. So this would have been late 30s for her.
Okay. Yeah. So I just Googled Prime Minister of Finland. Her name, I'm going to try my best. Sanna Marin. She's 36.
Yeah, that's crazy. Oh, God.
So yeah. I might go try to find, some things that she's said, or I would just be curious to hear, new ideas to explore the space. One
more quick put out there.
Yeah.
In the politics space, you make fun of me because I say he's my guy, Emmanuel Macron. I love, he's a liberal pro-business guy, and I think he has a heck of a challenge of keeping free speech and trying to manage French culture with the influence of religion and Islam and the refugees, and I think he's doing an incredible job at it.
I agree, and he's taken some stances that I think a lot of the left would disagree with, which is interesting because he is threading a needle through all of that, and there's been a little bit of a spotlight on it recently, and all with. Like you said, immigration and changing French culture while keeping French culture and all those different types of things. So, yeah, I agree. I certainly respect him. I wish I maybe knew more, but he's in a tough spot.
he's
sure.
just somebody where I feel like if I was a French person, I would be proud that he was a representation of my country.
Even if you disagree with him, you should be at least we have a pretty solid leader.
Yeah.
Yes, well spoken, well thought out person running the show, steering the ship. That is a good one. Yeah.
It's a good one to end on. I feel like part of me thinks some people listening to this are like, wow, it's cool to hear people talk about their leaders. Other people being like, you just name dropped for an hour and I don't know what to do with this.
As it was happening, I was like, this is either going to be a really, really cool episode to listen to, or people will be like, that was so boring. So I don't know. Hey, email us.
Yeah.
Forbiddendinnertable@gmail.com. Let us know what you thought, because this is, for me, this legitimately was a fun one. Sometimes that's more true than other times. And this one really was fun to just talk about who influences us. And some of these names, if they're not familiar, go check them out. Listen to their stuff.
Yeah, pick one from it. Hopefully one that, even I guess one that fell from grace if you want to study who we used to like and who
we liked them for a reason. But
that's true.
We also struck them out for a reason. But I think this was great. So honestly, thanks again to Evan, who really created the springboard for this whole thing. Because by answering that question the way he did, we were both like, wow, we need to explore that more.
Totally. And we have a huge overlap, as you saw, us bouncing back and forth. But it was cool to hear you name some names that I wouldn't have expected as well. So.
Right on. Well, take it, use it, live.
All right.
With that, everybody, have a good night, and thank you for listening.